Hello, and my name is CJ, and I'm here to talk to you everything there is about sliders. And this is the Sliders Review. And I'm here to talk to you about Professor Maximillian Arturo, or commonly known as just the Professor. He is played by actor John Rhys-Davies, and he lasted from the first all the way to the first half of the third season. Professor Maximillian Arturo, and he teaches at the university in which Quinn goes to. The professor teaches cosmology and ontology. He doesn't know much about sliding technology, but he knows a lot about string theory and parallel dimensions, in which the courses he teaches. Now, when it comes to the professor, he has a high level of eloquence, very British and very poised, and very classic in a way. And for the most part, he is the hero of the first 3 seasons. And I say this because even though the professor wasn't smart enough to invent sliding and don't know much about sliding technology, he knows a great deal about other stuff. And it is, in fact, he is the one that saves pretty much every world they visit in the first 3 seasons, whereas Quinn doesn't, because Quinn is always either being captured or doing something else. Now, one huge thing the professor is always stating to all the sliders is we should slide the parallel earth, but we should never ever interfere in their lives. But he also has a very, very huge attitude. Now, the professor, him and Wade, they go to Quinn's basement in the pilot to try to talk to him because they feel he's acting kind of weird, which in fact it was never Quinn that was acting weird because Quinn was on a parallel earth. At that time his double was on his earth just wreaking havoc. While they're in the basement, the professor notices that Quinn has created sliding, and he's very, very excited about this because he loves the fact that his student has created something that no other man has. But it also causes some jealousy with the professor, because in both the pilot and a few episodes in the other season, we start to see that the professor is actually jealous at the fact that this younger guy, who's his student, was able to do something in which he was not. And it's even more aggravating to him that he has a hard time trying to fix on the timer because he doesn't know much about the actual technology. He knows the principles in which it was made in the formulas in which string theory can occur, but he does not know much about the actual technology of the timer itself. The professor sees Wade as being kind of this dopey, stupid girl who's just in it for thrills, and she doesn't like his arrogance. She's tired of his little rude mouth and how he's always able to judge people based on either appearances or personalities. Now, the professor's recurring gag is that he calls people blistering idiots, which is probably like the funniest thing throughout the first 3 seasons. Now, like I said before, the professor is smarter and somewhat the hero of the show. And I say this because in many of the episodes in the first season, and in fact in the second and the third, the professor is always the one saving people. Even in the pilot episode, he assumes the role of his double to infiltrate a high Russian military base on which they're trying to free the American prisoners. So if it wasn't for him, they would never be able to get onto the base in the first place. Fever, like I said before, is one of my all-time favorite Sliders episodes. There are no antibiotics and all kinds of diseases are running rampantly and just killing people left and right. And the main virus that is killing people is an epidemic known as the Q. And the Q virus, of course, is named after Quinn. But in fact, it was actually the military that engineered this virus, and they are the ones who infected Quinn just so they can infect everybody else in the world. During this episode, Wade is affected extremely by the virus. Professor has a small case of it, and later Rembrandt has a small case of it too. Quinn, on the other hand, has been taken captive by the military, and they're constantly interrogating him and putting him through quarantine. So the only person to save everybody is the professor. He starts to notice that the Q virus is kind of like strep, and when he finds the Quinn of that world, he discovers that antibiotics have never ever been invented. He is on a desperate urge to invent penicillin. So he's constantly going through every trash can looking for mold so that he can create a single strand of the vaccination that they need to survive. He does this, and because of this, he's able to save the lives of the Sliders and the lives of everybody on that world. In the episode Last Days, he's once again the savior of their world. While Rembrandt is off partying and Quinn is off trying to recreate sliding technology in the basement of his double, because his double actually has time travel equipment, the professor has discovered that the atom bomb has never been invented on that world. So he decides to work with Benish to recreate the atom bomb because Benish has the prototype for it in his house. So the professor is the one who saves the entire world because after him and Benish create the atom bomb, they launch it out into space and they destroy the asteroid that's supposed to destroy the entire Earth. In the episode A Week or Six, the professor has another important role in which on that world men don't have no rights. They can't vote, they're not allowed to be political leaders, and they have the role of just working in the kitchen. Pretty much the role women on our world had years ago. So he tries to establish a backbone for all the men and be a political leader, and he runs for mayor. In the second season, we no longer see a world in peril to where the professor actually has to save everybody. He is now taking a much more relaxed role in the series. His attitude is still there, but we mostly see him hang around with Rembrandt now, mainly because they're both around the same age. Him and Wade no longer bicker back and forth about equal rights for men and women. An episode entitled Post-Traumatic Slide Syndrome, we find out that actually there are two Arturos now, and because a huge fight broke out towards the end, the Sliders aren't sure which one slid. In the third season, the professor also becomes a little bit more laid back after finding out that he's about to die. He's very careless and just doesn't care about what happens and the things he does on other Earth. In the episode The Guardians, he not only gets into a bar fight with a bunch of bikers, but he also goes bungee jumping. Because he is now stricken with that of a terminal illness, the professor pretty much just wants to leave the rest of the Sliders and go about his own business without them worrying about him. Quinn, on the other hand, doesn't want the professor to leave because now their bond is stronger than that of the first and second season, to where they see each other as a father-son relationship. The professor decides to stay, and because of that, he is now reverted back to how he was in the first season as being the world savior. He does everything from enabling the Sliders timer to function during an electrical twister to repairing that of an android. In the episode State of Art, when the professor is help repairing an android, him and Wade have a huge discussion about whether or not androids are actually living beings. He feels as though they're just a toaster, whereas she feels though even though they are synthetic, they are still considered living and real. We really don't see him hang out with Rembrandt that much in the third season, but after Rembrandt finds out that the professor is dying and that Quinn knew about it the whole time in the internal body, he is upset at the fact the professor will keep this information from him, and that the professor doesn't see both him and Quinn as equal. However, because the actor playing the professor was having disagreement with the writers and the producers, they decided to fire him in the first half of the third season. In the episode The Exodus, we actually see the professor's last appearance. As he is trying to save a world, a man by the name of Colonel Rickman shoots him. And well folks, there you have it. That's the rundown on Professor Arturo.